Today we celebrate the fourth Sunday of Easter, which we know of as Good Shepherd Sunday, which simply means that every year, 3 weeks after Easter, we know that Easter is the first Sunday, second, third, fourth, so 3 weeks after Easter, we always celebrate Good Shepherd Sunday as a church, which means that the gospel typically comes from John chapter 10, which is his discourse on Jesus saying, I am the Good Shepherd. We know that in the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I am various things. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the way and the truth and the life. So in chapter 10, he says, I am the Good Shepherd. So in today's Gospel, we have Jesus telling us twice, I am the Good Shepherd. And of course, we'll unpack what that means, both before Mass and during the homily. But before we begin, we draw our attention to those verses there at the bottom of the page, in which Jesus says, I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. These also I must lead, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock, one shepherd. Those are some powerful words, especially for those of us who are part of various Catholic traditions outside of the Roman Church. I don't know about you, but many years ago, we believed that if you were not Roman Catholic, what would happen when you died? You'd go to hell. There was no hope for salvation if you were outside the Roman Church. In fact, we even had a saying for that in Latin. We said, extra ecclesia nullo salvat, which simply means outside the church there is no salvation. Have you heard that kind of thinking before? Especially before the 1960s. Before the 1960s, extra ecclesia nullo salvat simply meant outside the church there is no salvation. Your friends who are not Catholic, we love them dearly, but there's no hope for them. It was that thought that fueled our attempts to convert others to the Catholic religion. Think, for instance, when we landed in the New World, who were the first explorers to come to the New World? The first explorers came from Spain, landed in 1517. In 1517, when Hernán de Cortés landed in Spain, what religion was he? He was Roman Catholic. He was sponsored by Fernando and Isabella, the king and queen of Castile. They were what religion? Roman Catholic. So when they sent him over, they sent him with soldiers, but also with priests and friars who would be able to evangelize the New World. Which meant that when they landed in the New World, what did you have to do if you were a Native American, if you were part of any of those indigenous peoples that settled in Mexico? You had two choices. You could convert to the Catholic religion, or it was the end. We say that we evangelized, we conquered America by the sword and the cross, essentially meaning we gave people those two options. It's either the cross or the sword. Which do you choose? So it's interesting for us to think where we've come from as a church, thinking that everyone in the world had to be Catholic. Let's think about it for a moment. How many people in the world are Catholic? Have we asked ourselves that before? How many people are in the world right now, today? We're guessing about over 7 billion people now. That's 7,000 millions. 7,000 million people are on this earth. 7 billion people. So of those 7 billion, how many are Catholic? All 7 billion? No. What are we going to guess? So we know that there are different Catholic churches. The largest is the Roman Church. The Roman Church has over 1 billion. So that's roughly 1 in every 7 people on this earth is part of the Roman Church. The second largest is the Orthodox Catholic Church. That church that excommunicated the Roman Church in 1054. Orthodox is a fancy word meaning right believing. They believe that they have the correct faith. Do we remember why they excommunicated the Roman Catholic Church? Ooh, this is a bit of history. Because the Roman Catholic Church added one word to the creed. Did you ever notice that when we say the creed together? When we say the creed together, there are 3 words that are in parentheses because it's those 3 words that caused the split in the Catholic Church in 1054. So half the church today says those words that are in parentheses, and other Catholic churches today don't say those words. What are those words? The words in parentheses in the creed are, and the Son. Any of us old enough to remember Latin before we started changing the Mass in the 1960s? The word that we used in Latin was filioque, so it was just one word in Latin. Filioque means and the Son. And because of that one word that the Roman Church put into the creed, we split the church into 2. The winners of that fight called themselves the Orthodox, or right-believing Catholic Church, and those who were excommunicated were merely Roman Catholics, which is why we see those words in parentheses every time we say the creed, because those are such controversial words. In the West, we're used to saying those words, but in the East, they have no history of saying those words. They never professed that faith. And when the Roman Church and the Western Church started putting those words in the creed, it split the church. So how interesting that for the first time the church was split in 1054. Actually, there were other splits before then, but those were smaller splits. This was the first big split where bishops took sides. And in this big split then, what happened was each side started thinking that they were the real church. They were the correct church. The Orthodox Catholic Church believed that they were the real church. The Roman Church believed that they were the real church, which is why today's gospel is so important. Because what does Jesus tell us? I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold, whatever this fold is. You follow me? If you define yourself as American Catholic, here in the American Catholic Church, we pride ourselves on our tradition of independent Catholicism. But you know what? We know that Jesus has other sheep outside of the American Catholic Church. He has other sheep outside of the Orthodox Catholic Church. He has other sheep outside of the Roman Catholic Church. He has other sheep outside of whatever church you name. His words today challenge us to keep in mind that he has other sheep of other flocks, and he's the shepherd of those flocks too. So think of all of your non-Catholic Christian brothers and sisters. You know what? They're probably okay. We probably don't need to go out and be preaching to them about how it is that they need to be part of our religion, because Jesus clearly tells us in today's gospel, I have other sheep, and they will hear my voice, and one day there will be one flock with how many shepherds? One shepherd. How's that for a humbling lesson today? When we think that we are the only people in this world who have the truth, right? What does Jesus tell us? Wait a minute, people. I have other sheep who are not part of this flock. And I will call them, and one day we will all be one.
Father God, finally, we preached one Sunday on this concept of universalism. And I thought it was kind of gutsy, for him to do that. So I went back and did a little bit of research on this concept of universalism in the Catholic Church, and we didn't get very far. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because it does seem to be buried somewhere in Catholicism that we are all destined to be with God in the end.
So Gary raises the question of universalism. Let's unpack that word and also its opposite. What is the opposite of universalism? The opposite of universalism is particularism. So either you're part of a universal church or you're part of a particular church. So far so good? So in this concept of universalism, how many people are part of the universal church? The universal church is everyone. But in this universal Catholic Church, or part of the universal Christian church, how many particular churches are there? There are lots. There are lots of particular churches that make up the universal church. So that, for instance, the Roman Catholic Church is a particular church that is part of the Universal Church. So the American Catholic Church in the United States is a particular church that's part of the Universal Church. The Orthodox, or Right Believing Catholic Church, is a particular church that's part of the Universal Church. The question becomes this: how do you think about things like the church? Do you have a universal mindset that we're all brothers and sisters? Or do you have a more particular or parochial mindset where it's just us who have the truth and everyone else is wrong? Before the 1960s, that was the predominant view, which means that many of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, they were all part of that thinking that you had to be a certain way, and you had to think a certain way. That's tough. For those of us who were raised like that, I was raised like that, that's tough to switch that mode of thinking from thinking, whoa, wait a minute, Jesus in today's gospel says, I have other sheep who are part of this flock. And one day there will be one flock and one shepherd. People will wake up and open their eyes and realize, you know what, we're all one. Even though you call yourself Baptist, and you call yourself Lutheran, and you call yourself Methodist, and you call yourself Episcopalian, and you call yourself Roman Catholic, and you call yourself American Catholic, and you call yourself Orthodox Catholic, we are all going to wake up one day and open our eyes, the light bulb will go off, and we'll realize how it is that we are one. With how many shepherds? One. One shepherd, one flock. That's universalism at its best, Margie.
But the Roman Catholic Church doesn't see it that way, does it?
But the Roman Catholic Church doesn't see it that way, she asks. That's the challenge. So for centuries in the Roman Catholic Church, we said, extra ecclesia nulla salus, which simply means outside the church there is no salvation. Which church are we talking about? The Universal Church? No. We're talking about the Roman Church. Fascinating. And so how interesting that today many of us are opening our eyes because we go to work with people of other religions, right? We go to work with people who are of other Christian religions, and even people who are not Christians, and we think to ourselves, wait a minute, my friends who are Jewish or Muslim or Sikh or Buddhist or Hindu or who are atheists, isn't it true that we all share a lot in common? And just because they might worship God, however they understand God in a different way, does that mean that they're going to hell? Probably not. Not if we believe in a merciful and loving God. Karl Rahner, we've talked about him before, he was that Roman Catholic German theologian who lived from 1904 to 1984. Karl Rahner used to say that those who are not Christian, those who are Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, you name it, even atheist or agnostic, that they are anonymous Christians, meaning, if we were to think about it, we share more in common with them than that which divides us. So just because they use different names for God or different ideas for God, or just because they question the existence of God, as human beings, we have more in common with them than we ever begin to imagine. So why should we start to exclude them, or talk down to them, or somehow treat them in ways in which we believe that we are superior to them? Because that's an idea that's going into the dustbins of history. So I think you're right, Margie, that's how we as a church used to think. Right? Which is why we evangelized the New World. When we landed our boats in the New World, what did we think of all the indigenous peoples of the Americas who were worshiping God as they understood God to be? We thought that there was no hope for them. So if they're going to hell, if you're going to hell, I'll give you a choice right now. You can go to hell right now, the sword, or you can come to Jesus, the cross. And what did that do here in the Americas? That led people to say, oh yes, I'm Christian, but they continue to hold on to other beliefs. And what did that do to the church? Anthropologists call that syncretism, because I'm going to save my life by saying, yes, I believe and I'll be a Catholic, so you baptize me. An example would be St. Juan Diego. Have we heard the story of St. Juan Diego? Who appeared to St. Juan Diego? Oh, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Appeared to an Indian. What was his name? His name was St. Juan Diego in Spanish, San Juan Diego. In his native language, Nahuatl, his name was Cuautlahuatzin, and Cuautlahuatzin means he who speaks like an eagle. Follow me now. So Cuautlahuatzin, he who speaks like an eagle, now had a choice. He could choose two things. What was the choice that he had? To be baptized or to die. Which did he choose? He chose to be baptized. When you were baptized back then, you got a new name. What was his name? Juan Diego, which would translate to English as what? John James, right? Juan, John, Diego, James. So James, John, or Jimmy John. So Jimmy John, Juan Diego. Has no one ever used words like that in terms of saying? We're not being disrespectful here, right? So one day, according to the story, Jimmy John brings to the bishop of Mexico City, Juan de Zumarraga, an image painted on a cloth, and the bishop, who speaks Spanish, is not understanding this Indian well, but what he's understanding him to say is that this is a picture of who? Of Mary. For anyone in Cuautlahuatzin's culture, when they looked at that picture, Our Lady of Guadalupe, did they see Mary? They didn't see Mary, they saw Tonantzin, the mother goddess of the Aztec religion. So suddenly we see this syncretism, this blending together of the Catholic faith and of the indigenous religions with this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, who when we look at it, we see Mary. But when our indigenous brothers and sisters look at that same image, they don't see Our Lady of Guadalupe, they see Tonantzin, the mother goddess of their religion. Same figure. When people look at it, the same image, they see two different things. That resulted from the syncretism that resulted when we evangelized the New World. Fascinating history. We could come up with all sorts of other examples of how it is that when cultures begin blending, their beliefs come together. Here in the United States, where there are lots of beliefs, what happens? All of those beliefs come together, and suddenly we realize that, you know what, we shouldn't be so quick to judge our brothers and sisters.